Hello and welcome to episode 456 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 9th of April 2026. My name is Chris Thurston, and on this episode I am joined by Jamie Britton.
Hello.
And longtime friend of podcast, Mike Cook.
Hi,
Mike.
Mike. Hello.
Hi. It's been a while since you last joined us.
It has been a while. I've been in the wilderness. I've been literally living in other countries. I've been worn down by the ravages of time and academia, but I'm still here. And it's great to be back. It's great to see you both.
You were last on the pod in 2019 talking about AI, which is one of your areas of expertise, and you'd think there'd been more kind of development in that field since then. You'd think there would have been some sort of seismic change. It's really nothing much has happened at all, as far as I can tell.
It's been really rough, and that was why I didn't come back on the podcast, because it was just sort of awkward and embarrassing. It was such a quiet few years. The whole thing really crashed. I don't know if any of your listeners will actually remember, but AI used to be something outside of video games. They used to talk about it in the press and stuff.
Really? Yeah. How have things been? I appreciate working in academia, working, I guess in AI is probably the wrong format, but being an expert in that now long since defunct technology, how has it been?
Yeah, it's been it's been kind of wild. I can't introducing myself to people now is like a nightmare, like a genuine nightmare. I think I probably even commented on it in 2019 because it was already weird then, but now it is actual agony for me. It takes so long for me to describe what I do because I'm hedging it in so many different directions. But on a personal level, there's been some nice stuff. I've got a permanent job in academia now, which I'm very lucky to have, but it also means that I've got more responsibilities, which I wasn't looking forward to, right? There's a lot of other job stuff. But one of the best things about it has been introducing young people and young students to stuff like game development that they might not have had a chance to otherwise. And that's been really cool. So there's been a lot of upsides to it and nice things as well.
Something occurred to me which might be analogous to your experience of explaining what you do. And I don't know if this is right, but I had one experience in my life relatively in the last couple of years, I think, of meeting a friend's older parents and explaining that I work in the games industry. So in my case, games industry. And that conversation proceeding for quite a while before I realized that what they thought I meant was making gambling machines for the corners of pubs or betting shops, right? Because that's what gaming meant to them. They weren't thinking video games. They weren't thinking tabletop or anything in that space at all. They heard gaming, and in its more traditional meaning, they heard gambling. And I realized maybe it's slightly different, but it realized that no, actually, I'd kind of explained that actually in the intervening time, a whole different industry sort of emerged, co-opted the term, and it means this now. And so, but also to them, yes, you're absolutely right. That's basically what we do. But I don't know if that's analogous at all. But the notion of another kind of whole discipline almost kind of co-opting the popular meaning of a term.
No, it absolutely is. And my research is in AI for creativity and for the games industry. And what that means is, I think for me, the thing is that I don't know which person I'm talking to, right? Mm-hmm. However I describe my job, it's going to sound wrong. But I don't know if it's going to sound wrong in that they want to kill me or invest in me. And either way, it's you've got the wrong idea, but we're going to have a very awkward conversation before we get to that point, right? I do miss the days where just no one knew what I was talking about. That was actually kind of, on reflection, those were happier times. But there is good stuff about it as well. And part of it is just that as time advances and technology becomes a bigger part of our lives, there's loads of downsides to that, but there's also loads of really, really cool and wonderful things coming out of it as well. And new creative communities and things, which I've had fun, getting to know and being a part of. So there are always upsides. I dwell on the downsides a lot, but there's been some good stuff as well.
Have you had the experience, Mike, of a guy with a big cigar saying, looking at you and sort of the, dollar signs appearing there, eyeballs, and because it's happened to me a couple of times when there's a certain type of industry person who hears that I had something to do with the show Skins, and their kind of IP radar starts up and they get very excited about, and then they realize that I'm just quite a disappointing person in actuality, and there's not really much I can offer them. It's happened to me a few times. I just wondered if anyone had ever made that discovery about you.
No, 100%. I've disappointed many people in my life, but specifically, like, you are right. Like, I get that variant a couple of times. Like, you'll meet investors who are at academic conferences sometimes, or another really common thing is to get emails from people who want to talk to you about, like, they see the word AI and they see the word games on my website, and so they want to talk to me about this startup or this idea or this opportunity. And I have to explain some, like, 99% chance, like, it's not what you think. Like, it's not going to work out, you know? But I think the most brutal, the most brutal assessment I've had is, like, from the undergrads. Because I hadn't taught really for my whole career until the last few years, meeting young people essentially for the first time, like, I don't have kids either, in a long, long time, was like a realization that there is, like, a whole other world that you're not exposed to if you don't have kids, right? So, like, they had, like, shortened versions of ways that they referred to the different large language models that they used on a daily basis, and they were like, they'll often, like, ask you which large language model you use to make something, no matter what it is. Like, most of the time the answer is none. I don't know what you mean by this, but they just got, like, their experience of the world is, like, completely different. So I've had lots of, like, withering stares and an eye rolling and things like that. Like, about this stuff I used to talk, like, maybe 10 years ago plus. A lot of my work was, like, meeting game developers and talking to them about what they thought technology could be for them. Like, we were just sort of exploring lots of different stuff, right? And that was interesting because no matter what response you got, it was just interesting to hear from people. And I still get that now. It's still, like, even when people say something that is completely untrue about AI, it's still really interesting to think, like, well, why do they think that? And, like, where did we go wrong, or what mistake did we make? You know, so there's always something interesting, even when, like, internally I'm sobbing. You know, I was at an event recently where someone came up to me. They just said I had performed with a bunch of people, and they were complimenting the performance and stuff and talking about it. And then they casually mentioned that they worked in AI. They didn't know I did. And then they went and sat down. And very stupidly, I did not think about any of the things that we've been talking about for the last 10 minutes. And I went over and was like, oh, you work, like, I also work in AI. So I did it to myself this time. I was like, what do you mean? And then it just turned out that he just described, like, one of the most, like, horrific startups you can imagine. And I was like, why did I ask this question? What was I thinking? Like, you know, so even I'm susceptible to it as well.
So, apologies. My cat has come in and is now attacking some paper in the corner of the room. You can enjoy him there in the corner of the screen. Buddy, that's the loudest thing you could have chosen to do. Thank you for this. This is really? Now is your time.
So you feel anything.
All right. I've wiped my own brain now. Thank you, Potato. I think the certainly as someone who's been, like, on the job market in games for not quite a year, it has changed the conversation so much about game development, and and in truth, the, like, appropriate kind of response needs to be so nuanced, because definitions have become so blurry, and there's so much hype, and there's so much inflated. There is a mixture of, like, totally inflated expectations about what technology can do or assist it with, or what you would even want it to assist with, even if all else were equal, even if costs were reasonable, if impact was reasonable, etc. Like, when you would actually need it. Lots of really, like, kind of just sort of kind of nuts and bolts kind of practicalities that you kind of have to keep reasserting. And then on the other side, there's the way that, like, any sort of generative technology has been helpful for game development for years, you know what I mean? And in ways that kind of go completely unremarked. Like, I don't think anyone is, like, picketing outside Speed Tree right now, right? or any other tech, right? Like any other auto rigging thing that helps animators out and so on. And I think it's become we're in a period in time where I don't think I've ever known it to be this complicated to talk about the tech of making games. Because also, like, I was doing a lot of Develop Conference at my former job over kind of, I think, a vital couple of years for this, where you talk to people who had interesting tech to show off, who would be completely genuine. And a few years ago, prior to this current moment, the other thing would always be like Web3 or NFTs or blockchain or something like that.
Right.
And people would, and that's my experience of someone coming over with money in their eyes and going like, oh, you got a game there. Can I make it worse? And And like, what if a player paid for a picture? I'm like, no. But and that same, and then they would slink away disappointed and come back next year with a different thing, right? Like a different fad, frankly. And then at some point in that time, AI as a broad term overlapped both in a way that I think has completely occluded the former, by which I mean the like gradual improvement of like tools and technology and like and the tech of making games. And yeah, I'm sorry, I could talk about this forever because because they're at the leading edge of it as well. Like I've seen why it's not especially helpful to try and use any kind of generative tech for concept art, for example. Right, as someone who ran concept art processes for a long time, just never really got any mileage out of it because it was just like, well, that sure is a picture. But I mean this quite seriously. Like, there's this assumption that it would revolutionize that side of the business, but truthfully, when you're at that stage of concepting, what you really want is reference to kind of rally around. And sure, that could be generated, but it could also be from Google Images. It could also be from a stock image gallery. It could be a still from a movie. And so, in that context, where it's like, well, we've just found a complicated way of regurgitating effectively that, but in a way where we now can't trace its lineage, which is its own cuttlefish. Anyway, I could ramble about this, but I think like the sort of semantic collapse of all of this stuff. Well, I was about to say pretty complicated, but then I realized I'm talking to you, Mike, and this is your daily hell. So,
but it's perfectly reasonable, right? Like, it's affecting all of our lives now. Like, and in 2019, it's funny. I was talking to some of my friends recently, and I was like, "Oh, it's the 10-year anniversary of the AI boom this year because it was 10 years last month that Lee Sedol lost to AlphaGo in a very famous game of Go." And they were like, "What do you mean 10 years? Like, it's been like 3 years." And it occurred to me that, like, obviously I've had a very different perception of it blowing up. But like in 2019, it was affecting my life in some ways, but now it's affecting all of our lives. So it's perfectly reasonable for all of us to have our own individual hell that we're experiencing from it. Even the people who are using it and loving it are also experiencing their own kind of hell. It's been a weird few years.
Well, I mean, the last time I saw you, Mike, we were in a room full of game developers, and we were all talking about AI and kind of how we played around with it and sort of used it and stuff like that. And we were all talking in ways that we wouldn't feel comfortable talking about, like in a public setting, because to be honest, it's just too. You can't talk about it. Not because of woke, but just because it's too upsetting. It's costing too much damage. Yeah. It's like it's a really tricky thing to navigate because there are some aspects of it which seem sort of inevitable, and that sort of suggests that we should, if not embrace, but kind of explore them. But then again, it was interesting to be chatting to those people and to be one of those people, really, because it's like, it's such a transitory time for everyone, and everyone's feeling very anxious about it, and understandably so.
I'd be interested if you agreed with this, Mike. My feeling is that fundamentally what we have right now is an accelerant for the ills of the system we were otherwise occupying. And the thing that made me think about that was a piece that a friend of mine, friend of pod, David Kay, wrote quite a while ago. It might have been a couple of years ago, might have been less, but about the kind of differing take-up of AI and game development in the US, I think specifically, versus Japan. And this is kind of like secondhand knowledge on my part, so I can't say this with any like great personal knowledge. But the notion being that in a kind of a business environment where kind of hierarchies and profit expectations are a little bit more flat, like the impact of the technology is necessarily slightly more benign. And this is taking aside like cost and impact again, than it is in a business environment that prioritizes like hugely vertical organizational structures and reward structures and things like that. Like you put it into the number go up forever machine and it makes things worse, right? And I don't know. I mean, I'll pause there. Like, would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of problems with this stuff in the sense that a lot of the way that AI works right now, and a lot of the way that we talk about it, and we develop policy about it, and we develop investments about it, is about hypotheticals. Mm-hmm. So there are ways in which people tell me that their lives have been meaningfully improved by AI, but like you say, they're not in terms of exponential changes or whatever. But a lot of the way it's being used is with the assumption that at some point we will need to have it in place in case everyone else does. I think Rockstar's CEO actually went on the record and said exactly this. He was like, look, we don't actually think it's going to be that useful, but because everyone else is going to use it, we don't have a choice. I think that I saw that in an RPS article like a few years ago now. And in some ways that's created this perfect storm, because sometimes I liken it to like a new drug. Like sometimes you'll hear that the medical researchers have found this drug that they think will cure some incredible disease. And when you hear that headline, you know that you're like 5 to 8 years away from seeing it at all, if it even materializes, right? Because we have such a long process where we check if a drug is okay before we release it into the world. And you have to do so much stuff. And with this, it's like there are some things about it that you can assess immediately. Bad, good, middling, whatever. And then there's a bunch of stuff where we don't really know what happens if, for example, an industry that's predicated on like hiring lots of juniors and burning them out suddenly doesn't need to hire them at all, or doesn't think they need to hire them at all. Like, I have no idea. What does that do in 10 years? I haven't got a clue. Or like, you see these studies where they're like, ChatGPT supercharges your brain or destroys it in a different study. And you're like, wow, I don't know which one of these is correct, but boy, I would love to know before I gave it to all of my students, And so I feel like the accelerant aspect of it is exactly like, it's both the thing that makes it attractive and also the thing that is like very, very worrying. And to Jamie's point as well, like one of the important things about technological change impacting society is that everyone gets a chance to talk about it and discuss it. And that was kind of the thing that got taken away, I think, a little bit in the last few years, where it's no longer something that's in that debate zone anymore. It's something where the public has sort of like lost their grab on it. And actually, one of the places which I feel that isn't as bad is actually in games. I feel that's one of the reasons for it is that people who play games they're exposed to a lot of experimental technology, and they've also exposed to AI. Like they've played with AI a lot over the years in different forms. And so that is actually a space where you still see people talking about AI quite vocally, what they like, what they don't like. And I find that interesting. It's another reason why I just like games as a space to be working in, because it is a space where they have had a bit more of a chance to sort of talk about it out in the open. But one of the things that I have noticed, which I think maybe you were alluding to, Chris, this is not something I talk about a lot in public because I think it's something that people don't necessarily like, but I think it is being used in the games industry a lot more than we realize. And I think one of the reasons is that people don't want to talk about it. And whether or not we think it's good that it's being used, I think not talking about it is like really dangerous because we just don't really have a sense of what it's doing as a result. So I hope that changes in the coming years. But who knows? Honestly, it feels like right now, it feels like anything could happen month by month, really, doesn't it? So
I think that's right. And I think for me, it's because, as you say, like I call it a hype. I think this, but the other way of putting it would be the sort of like presumed inevitability of the technology. And no technology is inevitable by default, right? Like, I just don't think that can be rationally true. I don't think that's like an ideological position. I think it's just like, if thing don't work, thing isn't, right? Like there's and I think that kind of brings things down to earth a little bit. But there's so much, very good book recently, More Everything Forever by Adam Becker, who's an astrophysicist, about a lot of subjects, including space travel and AI and effective altruism and the broader culture around this kind of technology, which has to presume a kind of futurism to kind of morally justify itself in the present, which is a lot of it boils down to a very simple statement, which is, I am a billionaire. It must be morally good that I'm a billionaire. How do I reverse engineer that position into actions I can take in the present that don't involve me ceasing to be a billionaire? That's basically what it comes down to. And AI gets caught up in that, etc. And I do think there's like something inherently irrational about all of that. And I think it prompts an equal weight of very understandable emotion because it pulls at your anger at the whole system, basically. When it comes to its usage in games, the best antidote is simply like a kind of the same to apply the exact same risk assessment and benefit analysis to it that you would to any other tool or technology or hire or any other change you might make to or decision you might make in the course of developing a game. There's a really good piece or like quote by Adam Smith, formerly of RPS, now director of writing at Larian, about because obviously they got in hot water around AI and kind of mentioning that they were kind of experimenting with it and so on. I think maybe somewhat naively kind of blundering into the conversation, not realizing how heated it understandably was. And Adam said something which is true in my experience as well. AI doesn't make game writing more efficient. It just doesn't. Like, and not in some sort of ideological, I'm a writer and I want to protect my craft way, although I do feel that way, but because generally speaking, with games writing, and Jamie, I imagine this will reflect your experience as well, the first thing you need a lot of the time is stubs, right? Like stubbed out dialogue or quest descriptions or whatever it is that allows your level designers or your content designers or whoever it is to stand up whatever the experience is supposed to be and make sure and get it to play testing, get it to some sort of state where you can start testing it. Those stubs can be as simple as like man tells you to get key or whatever, right? And then when that sort of thing is kind of, passing muster and every other discipline that's reliant on this, whether it's audio or art, etc., is getting what they need, then you can do a pass and make it good. By the time you've written what would be a prompt to generate that, you've written the stub. So you don't actually need to then press go. It's really simple. It's like you're kind of wasting your time by then generating a thing, copying it in, having to replace it later, etc. And I mean, that's not to say that dynamic text doesn't have a place. Of course it does, etc. in various cases. But for me, that sort of realization that like, oh, this is actually like not saving us any time, is I don't think that condemns the whole technology. Of course it doesn't. But it's that sort of like bringing it down to earth and going like, it doesn't solve this problem. Okay. Like moving on, right? Which I feel like we're not allowed to do. Like the kind of like moving on step is we're not quite there yet in terms of being able to kind of, particularly at like a big budget game level, to say, didn't solve the problem. We moved on, right?
Well, it's slightly terrifying as well with the the Rockstar guy saying that, if we don't stockpile nuclear weapons, well, the other side are going to do it anyway. Yeah, and so we need to do it. And it's like the kind of game theory of that. It's not like what happened is America made one nuclear bomb and Russia made one nuclear bomb, and then they're like, right, we both got one. Let's leave it alone for now, right? There was like a technological escalation and an arms race, right? Because you have to. As soon as you kind of concede to that notion, then you are in a de facto arms race, and you have to, and if you've got the economic might of Rockstar, then you've got that's a lot of might, and a lot of potential. I guess a lot of potential benefit and a lot of potential uncertainty, to say the least. So it's an interesting time.
I don't want to sidetrack you too hard, so please cut me off on this. But there's one of my favorite studies about this is some researchers got a bunch of programmers who contribute regularly to open source projects. They got them to do a bunch of programming tasks. Some were assisted by AI, some were not. The ones that were asked to predict what kind of time speed up they were going to get from the AI assistants. And they also asked some economists, some machine learning researchers, and I think some managers. And basically everyone involved predicted between 20 to 40% speed up on doing these tasks. And they even, after performing the study, they asked the programmers to estimate how much retroactively they felt they had been sped up. And the programmers also reported about a 20% speed up increase. And in reality, they did the tasks about 20% slower. And that study sticks out in my mind because I hear a lot of people say that they think AI saves them time or helps them in some way or other. And I truly believe they feel that way. But we just know so little about what this technology actually does. Like, we know so little about it that you still get these astonishing results where, having done a task, people were still unable to assess whether this thing had helped them or not. And it might be that was an outlier. We don't know. Like, we need a lot more studies, and we desperately need them because it's already everywhere. But that kind of thing just sticks out in my brain, like as like, wow. Like,
I think I'd be fascinated to know one day when it is, when those studies happen. I think like how much of that perception is down to the kind of like, maybe this is getting a bit too heady, but the kind of easing of whatever like cognitive load that work creates, right? Like I do sometimes think that, like, particularly in game dev, right, or any kind of high pressure environment, work environment, we live professional lives of like high pressure, task oriented, often kind of multidisciplinary with lots of context switching, and like burnout arises from basically, I mean, in my experience, it arises from some sort of like mismatch between reality and expectation, i.e., you've got to get all these things done. There's only so many hours in the day, or you've got to be this many different kinds of expert in a given day. And if nothing else, I think I have seen AI be a solve to the stress of that. Not necessarily actually solving the problems, but giving, that kind of the appeal of having a bonus brain to kind of put some of that kind of pressure into. And that may be, a kind of key part of selling it. And I think for me, I think of this in a lot of the games that I play and things that are appealing, the things that young people are playing and what they're getting into. It's been happening for decades. We've been acknowledging this happening for decades. People play kind of contained, well-made things that set out to deliver a particular experience and deliver it within limitations. Whether that's like a friend swap game or an indie game, or with a particular cell, or a Roblox minigame, or a Minecraft minigame, whatever it is, right? Whatever generation. And that is completely contrary to the notion that the problem the games industry has is like more stuff forever. And that is the other kind of double bind at the heart of this. Whereas I think that to me feels like a greater direction of travel. And like to get, not to skip ahead, but like that was kind of my feeling about Marathon. Like, oh, they've matured. Like Bungie have matured out of trying to make this massive MMO that is everything to everybody all the time. And they've made one game for a specific audience they feel they can cater to well within sustainable limitations. And to me, like, make something good within sustainable limitations is the humane way to make a good game. And I think that's sort of like where we are not, and it sort of shouldn't be surprising at that point when this technology is sort of solving a problem nobody actually has, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, and Bungie have made that game at the precise moment where entropy has set in with Fortnite. It's happening and it's costing people their jobs, and they're struggling to work out how to keep that game that would be a forever game that would expand forever. People are getting bored of it, and it's like, yeah, that was going to happen sooner or later. There has not, aside from WoW, I can't think of a forever game which has been self-sustaining at the level of fidelity and everything that is expected from an audience like that. The curated experiences are what people ultimately get out of bed for in this industry.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's, in terms of games as a medium, I think that's really interesting, because I think because for certainly all of our lives, the medium's kind of been defined by like constantly getting bigger and more complex and kind of pushing the boundaries of technology itself and things being possible. Now, like before we started recording, I remarked to Mike that I've been thinking recently about playing Cyberpunk again, because I played it when it came out. I really liked it, but since then it has had an expansion I've never played, bunch of patches, and it feels like time. Like I'm feeling the itch again. And in my brain, that's a kind of cutting edge game that came out a couple of years ago. It came out 5.5 years ago. Like it came out in 2020. And that to me is not just the timey-wimey thing. It's like, oh, like there hasn't been another comparably complex open world role-playing game in that time at all. So maybe it's time to acknowledge that actually, like, the medium is kind of finding its limits, at least as we understand it. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Like, paintings discovered their kind of natural boundaries quite a long time ago.
Didn't paintings evolve into... I'm trying to think what the Pokemon evolution of a painting is. Does it evolve into photography, and then photography evolves into...
I think...
people running away from trains arriving in stations.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Well, but I guess like it's like whether or not you're thinking of painting as the image as a form, or just like the specific craft and how it's put into practice and what we use it for, or how we deploy it, right? Anyway, but like I think
you don't have to worry about it. Just get AI to suck up every picture that anyone's ever done ever.
Right. Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. I think this is the thing. I think maybe I'm very romantically, in a kind of like capital R sense, invested in the notion that maybe everything's just slowing down and maybe we'll all get to rest soon. But I don't think I'm right.
That's kind of the feeling I had when, playing one of the first games I played that was a kind of more casual side to it was Theme Park on the Amiga. And of course the guy who made Theme Park is the motherfucker who's responsible for all this.
Right.
Demis Zavis, who won a competition and then brought about the apocalypse.
Yeah, I'm glad things are... it's good to see you, Mike. Gotta say. Good to see you.
Good to be back.
On this side of it. Yeah. Well, it'd be lovely to, have you on the pod more. And I promise you, I'm going to make a promise to you here and now. Short of any further revelations, I don't think we need to have like a 30-minute dissection of like tech, capitalism, and its role in our lives every time. But maybe as a treat,
Yeah, would you just whenever you? I'm here if you need it.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I think as long as me and you, Chris, are talking for at least as long as the actual expert, I think we're fine.
That self-consciousness has been burning in my breast for about 25 minutes. Then no, don't. Oh no,
it's great.
Let me flagellate.
No, but I think that's like I was saying. I think that's what's important, right? Is that everyone gets to talk about this stuff, right? Like, just because I know how to write a search algorithm or whatever, like, who gives a fuck?
Don't do yourself down, man. Like, but I will say this, like, I really appreciate, like, I remember years ago, like, chatting to you at Rezzed, probably, about the game I was working on at the time, Hack Mode, which is about kind of the future of AI and stuff like that. And I think, grateful to have your voice in this, because I think in this, by which I mean this kind of moment in time, because truthfully, when that kind of hype bubble gets inflated and expertise becomes quite a confusing thing to find because of vested interests and so on, it's like kind of grateful that there were, you and your colleagues like at the leading edge of this, able to kind of maintain some sense through it.
Thanks for saying that. It's a great pleasure. It's one of the things that I felt like very passionately about, I think, as a scientist. And it's been harder lately. It's harder to talk about it because the discourse is like very different. It's been dominated by different voices now, but it's still a real pleasure to come and talk to people about it at places like this. And it always has been. So thanks for saying that.
Shall we talk about what we've been playing on the computer? The most noble use of computer. Mike, why don't you lead us off? What have you been playing?
Well, I have been playing a wee bit of Marathon, but I suspect we will come to talk a little bit more about that later. But I have been playing a lot of Slay the Spire 2. I kind of injured my arm at the perfect moment to take advantage of a game that you can play with your left hand only. And Slay the Spire 2, I played a lot of Slay the Spire, and the game has now got a sequel, which just felt unreal actually getting a chance to play it. And it's really good.
Did you do all the ascensions in Slay the Spire 1?
I did. So my relationship with Slay the Spire was I bought the game a long time ago, and I completed it with each character, and then I was like, cool, and then I put it away. And then like 3 years later, yeah, right. Yeah. No, I was like, this is good. And I would see people that were much better at it than me, and I was like, I don't know what you're getting from this. Like, I don't understand what you mean when you talk about this stuff. Like, I was getting frustrated with it for not being able to like do certain things or whatever. But then I came back a few years later because a friend convinced me to try the Ascensions, and he'd written these guides, which was really interesting. And I found a couple of streamers that played it that I really liked, and I got a chance to like experience the game a bit differently, and I became really obsessed with it. I played a lot of it. I wouldn't say I'm like amazing at it, but like obviously I completed the Ascension levels, which are like these difficulty stages, right? And coming into Slay the Spire 2 was really fascinating. And it also got me thinking a lot about like indie sequels, because before it came out, I was really like unsure about how they would do it. And I had a lot of faith in them because they made a very good first game. But it was really interesting to compare that to other indie sequels and why some games never get sequels, even though they're really good. You both said that you were playing it, right? And that you put a bunch of time into it. Like, what's your current relationship with the game?
Oh, before just to quickly say, I just want to shout out our Discord stalwart, Noel, for completing the highest level of Ascensions on all characters the night before, I think it was, that the Slay the Spire 2 came out.
Nice.
It was genuinely nail-biting in the Discord, watching him fight to get that final Ascension level, which he did with literally hours to spare, which was
incredible,
excellent fun. So, yeah.
I think I've kind of had the experience with Slay the Spire 2 that you had with Slay the Spire 1 within Slay the Spire 1, in that when the first game came out, I played it a bunch, didn't touch Ascension levels at all. Eventually, as I have done, I think, with a lot of deck builder type, or even a lot of roguelikes generally over the years, gotten to quite a like. I feel like almost all of these games share something in common, which is like an early plateau, which acts as kind of an easy off ramp, which is like I've had my 10 hours. I think I get this now. And my choices, and I've achieved all of the low-hanging accomplishments. And the next one is like another 100 hours past where I've gotten. And not choosing not to go any deeper on it. So this Spire 2 has grabbed me more. I actually went into it with a friend straight into multiplayer, which is worth mentioning as a new feature. And that kind of and actually kind of just remember how to play the Spire in a multiplayer context. But since then, I've been playing it solo. I've beaten it once with every character, and I'm up to Ascension 5 on the Silent. That's kind of where I'm at with it. So it's about 40 hours, which is not nothing, obviously. And I think in that, now that I am doing the Ascension climb, at least with one character, I'm starting to see why people enjoy that. I don't feel like I have the experience of the first game or the expertise to know where my feelings are kind of valid, or they are just the kind of friction of trying to get better at something like this. Because obviously you get the frustration, you get the moments where, the card you want doesn't show up. I guess a difference as well for me is that in the last couple of years, I got really back into Magic the Gathering in real life, and I play a lot of draft. And so my brain has learned how to draft decks with physical cards, but more specifically learned the emotions that go with that and the traps you fall into, which is well, I want to do this. So I'm kind of going to ignore what the cards are actually showing me. I want this. And that being the death of the thing. So I think that's actually held me in quite good stead. But I definitely have had a few runs where I have felt I don't feel like I could have made any decision differently. And now I'm simply fucked. And that sort of being the kind of the way of things. But yeah, how about you, Jamie?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I really enjoyed Slay the Spire. I think I probably have, I don't know, 50 or 60 hours in the first one. Any game like this is always something that exists right on the edge of me being able to play it in any shape or form at all, right? So in that time, I maybe got, I think I probably completed the first game with a couple of characters, but on the lowest ascension, maybe. And that was really hard one. My brain does not think in that way. I've got various neurodiversities. Dyspraxia is one. ADHD is another. I think the dyspraxia, weirdly enough, which is a sort of spatial disability, is the one that really screws me over, because planning things in advance and, it's sort of spatial logic, which is kind of weirdly connected to the way these games work in terms of this and then that and then this, those kind of order of operations, are a real struggle. However, I can still do these things. They just probably take me 5 or 6 times longer than most people to learn. So I kept going back to Slay the Spire and spending another sort of 10, 15 hours with it over the years, and usually would find another little level of achievement, and that would be enough for me. I'd stop, for a game I played, 13 quid for way back when. It's really nice with Slay the Spire 2. There's a bunch of, and we can talk about it a little bit. I mean, I know probably most people playing it here, listening to this, have played it, but there's a bunch of quality of life things that are just really appreciated. Things as small as they just tell you who the boss is, right? Rather than having to decode a image which I can never keep in my head, which one is which and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And a diverse set of characters early on, mechanically diverse set of characters early on.
The diverse in both ways. There's a robot, a skeleton.
Yeah. a lady in a chair who screams horribly when she dies. I was not prepared for that. And that being oh, here's another fun way to play this. Here's another fun way to play this. I'm always going to die. So in Slay the Spire 2, I've got 10 hours in it, and I've got 1 win with the Ironclad, and that was sweat dripping from my brow kind of by the end of it. It was really fun and really satisfying. And if that's all I do with that game, I'm kind of I'm happy. But I'm still playing it, and I really like the new characters in particular are a real joy to play. I love the I don't know what she's called, the skeleton necro...
The necrobinder, yeah.
The necrobinder, who has a hand that absorbs any unblocked damage, and you can sort of resurrect and pump up and sort of send off to attack enemies. And it's just Slay the Spire is always going to be kind of mechanics the game. I think you called it, Chris, years ago. And it's it's such a clever way of visualizing that with that character. Quite a complicated thing that they're trying to get you to understand, and actually it's much more accessible for me than, say, the monk was in the last game, or even the defect was, because again, it's more easy for me to sort of visualize and understand the kind of logic behind how that character is going to succeed or fail in a given run. And alongside that, like the nicer animations are a huge, like they just make brain feel nice when man hit with sword, and when man hit with sword twice in a row because you've done a clever thing, which means you're going to hit twice and jump, you get that nice vibe. It's weirdly tactile. And so there's things like that which I just think little things, but make it much more friendly for someone who isn't going to be so good at the, like, I will break this game over my knee with pure maths. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'll be interested to find where my off ramp is, because it's a real unknown for me. Actually, I don't know if it will be in 2 hours or 200 hours.
It's interesting you both mentioned off ramps in that way, because something that I've been paying attention to lately. So one of the main streamer that I watch is a guy called Jorbs, who is a very lovely gentleman. He wrote a book about streaming, which is absolutely fantastic. And he gives these, like, in addition to streaming the game, he also makes these little like talks / they almost feel like lectures on his YouTube channel. And the game had some changes made to its beta branch to make it harder. So not the main channel of the game, and it resulted in the game getting review bombed. And he made a couple of really interesting videos about, like, what does it mean for a game to be difficult? Like, is Slay the Spire 2 difficult? Like, obviously it is difficult, right? But like he sort of tries to break down what that means. And I think one of the, not a problem exactly, but one of the dangers with the way that we all view games, right, is that you see something like the Ascension system and you think, like, well, the correct way to enjoy this game is to, like, unlock the highest Ascension and play it constantly at that level and win. And he talks about how, like, if you've come home from a long day at work and you want to just, like, play with some fun cards and get some synergies and see an interesting ending to a game and maybe win like half your runs or something on Ascension 0, like that is Slay the Spire 2 could have just been released with Ascension 0 and no other Ascensions, right? And it would be like a really fun card game. But it is really hard to figure out, like, what level is most fun for me here, especially when we get into the sort of psychology of, like, oh, should I be challenging myself? Is this a game meant to be like really difficult or whatever? The thing I slotted into in the end for Slay the Spire 1, which I suspect I will for 2 as well, was playing the daily every day, because the daily is so badly balanced in Slay the Spire 1 that it's often either trivial or impossible. And so you don't really worry too much, and you just sort of like go through it and see what happens. And I kind of liked that as the way my relationship with the game settled on. Like, I wasn't playing Ascension 20 all the time. I have exactly one win on Ascension 20 with each character, and that was more than enough. And I think it's nice when you have games where you can find that sort of groove with it. Like, before Slay the Spire 2 came out, I was playing Slice and Dice. Again, a nice game if you've injured your dominant hand. And that was really tough because, again, I felt like, when I completed a particular game mode at a particular difficulty, really I should either pick a different game mode or pick a higher difficulty. But I got to the point where I was like, this is miserable. Like every start, I feel the need to reset like 2 fights in. And so I just went back to, like, I found the right combination that was fun for me every time, and I just kept going through it. And I think the thing with Slay the Spire 2 is it actually is a bit, like, I would say it's significantly harder than Slay the Spire 1 in a lot of ways, or at least it's the kind of challenges it faces you with are more immediate and in your face. But I think the groove, I mean, at the moment, I'm not in that groove. I have finished Ascension 10 with one of the characters. It was, I don't think it was good for me to do it, but I did do it. But the groove at the lower Ascensions, like, feels really good. And there's some extremely stupid things you can do in that game, more so than Slay the Spire 1. And like you say, yeah, the animations feel good. There's a lot of, like, cute Easter eggs and weird interactions and things that were a delight to find. And yeah, I didn't expect it to be quite so, like, joyful in a way. It's a very interesting example of a sequel to a game that felt complete, which I think that was the thing that I thought most about when I was playing it.
Yeah, I think that point you make about, like, indie sequels is worth going a bit deeper into, because I think the way I would characterize it, I think it's actually a good example of the form, to the extent that it's a thing, because I think probably for most people it sort of replaces the first game, would be my observation. Either because if you loved the first game and played it to death, you're looking for something new now anyway. But if someone was completely new to either game, you'd probably recommend, I think, they jump into Slay the Spire 2 because of all of the kind of smaller tweaks and improvements, the expanded list of characters, etc. And also because it's going to be the one that gets supported and that people are talking about. So for me, it feels like a kind of that sort of kind of sits on top of and replaces the first game, adds one significant new feature in the kind of multiplayer side of it, which didn't necessarily feel like a missing piece, but I think it does round it out quite nicely. I think one point about these games, all the way back to Spelunky, which is important, is they are quite social in their way, right? Like, I think the purpose of doing this is to be able to say, like, compare how far you've gotten, whether that's on today's daily or it's like how you're getting on with the kind of the ascension levels as they ramp up. Because crucially, like, for example, I don't know if you'd agree with this, I'm only on an ascension 5 with one character. The ascension modifiers themselves aren't inherently super interesting, right? Like having one fewer potion slot or something like that. A lot, like in terms of what it does to like the possibility space of the game, it's not like, one of them is just like that curse card that exhausts itself every time it's in your hand, and it's just like a dead draw. Basically, it's like, oh, okay, right, really is just someone putting their hands on the numbers a little bit against me. What makes it interesting is that's a set of challenges every player has in common, and trying to think about, and then how it sort of forces you to play differently or think about the characters differently to overcome them is interesting. But personally, like, most interesting as a social thing, like you mentioned, reading guides and watching streams in order to kind of like share that. And so for me, multiplayer rounds that out nicely, even if no one kind of would naturally have asked for it. And then finally, just all the quality of life and the visual improvements, right? Just kind of tending the time to spend more time with the art and the animation. And so it's sort of one of those things where you couldn't answer the question like it definitely needed to exist, because obviously the first game is so complete, but definitely something about this one has given me access to it in a way that the first game didn't necessarily, despite being, as you say, harder, I think. I can't tell because I've managed to get further somehow, but like, yeah.
It's funny that like a couple of games to compare it to, like, I mean, first of all, I think that social thing's really interesting. Like, even when they don't have social features in these games, they become social games because of people like Jobs. And even a game like Balatro is inspired, I think, more by the guy who made it, Local Thunk, watching Northern Line play Luck Be a Landlord on Twitch and thinking, like, rather than playing it himself or playing Slay the Spire, he's like, I'm enjoying watching someone play this for an audience. I want to make a game like it. And that game became, the most gloriously social kind of experience, since Wordle, really, because everyone was playing it, and it was really easy, like you say, because it was really easy to kind of compare notes on it and compare, bits and bobs. But I'd like Monster Train 2, which I've played a fair bit of as well. Like, I don't want to spoil what goes on in that game, but that has a very clever way of kind of basically wholesale containing a good deal of the first game within that game, right? Which is really fun. And that's one of the tricks that games do, and Slay the Spire 2 does it. Spelunky doesn't quite do it. Spelunky 2 doesn't quite do it, but it sort of does it. Like, it has an experiential path through where you can kind of say, okay, I've passed the first game section of this, and now I'm in the kind of the sequel content, which is I think it's probably the most deft and ambitious articulation of that I can think of. And then there's something like Darkest Dungeon 2, which I don't know if either of you guys have played, but like, it's fascinating because their logic with that was like, we're happy with Darkest Dungeon as it is. It's fine. We don't want to add to it. We don't want to try and redo what that is particularly. So Darkest Dungeon 2 is an entirely different game, kind of based around the same mechanics. It's much more run based. It's much more roguelikey. It's kind of a run of that game will take a couple of hours rather than like the many tens of hours of full Darkest Dungeon 1 run. And for me, it was I don't know how well it did with its audience, but for me it was a really exciting and ambitious thing to play, because alongside them kind of taking a separate track off in terms of gameplay and design and structure, they also met that with a commensurate amount of like extra care and attention given to the like design of it and the feel of it and the look of it. And it's like one of the most beautiful games I've ever played, and the animations in it are just absolutely delicious and beautiful. And it's just interesting, isn't it, to think about, like, they put a lot of money into that game. They put a lot of care and time into it. And that's a real risk, I think, when you're saying, like, we're not going to do the I guess you could call what they've done with Slay the Spire 2 a little bit conservative. I mean, it doesn't matter, does it? Because everyone's loving it. But
it's interesting. I guess the way to break this down is the question we're actually asking. If you talk about an indie sequel, what we're really saying a lot of the time is like, what do successful indie developers do with the resources their first success gets them, right? Like, Tom Francis has spoken about this and written about this in interesting ways. Someone who does something new every time, which is perfectly, very laudable. I think the other side of that is the alternative, which I think is probably the case for Slay the Spire 2, which is what game would we have made the first time if we'd had more money, knew more, and understood our audience better? And it's like, and that's I think a really worthy endeavor as well, because nothing is you don't have that perfect schematic for what the best version of a game would be until it exists. Like, I think something that it took me a while to figure out, and it was only when I was over the fence in dev that I really figured it out, is that like the only like perfect design document for a game is the game itself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, doesn't matter how many Miro boards or Google documents you have, like, things discover their shape. And I can completely understand the developer going like, oh, I get it now, let's go make that. And sometimes I think where you see these games which are the kind of like plus version of their original, that's basically because he got close to nailing it the first time, to be honest. You just needed a few things here and there, and you can probably like have it fully live up to its potential. Because that's what Slay the Spire 2 feels like to me. It's Slay the Spire 1 living up to its potential with the structure. Yeah.
That's such a cool sentiment, Chris. Like, I love that phrase. It's very quotable. And I think you're absolutely right. I think what's interesting for me about Slay the Spire in particular is that it was aggressively patched and updated, like during I think the first 2 years of its existence. I wasn't really playing it in that period, but like I think it got a patch every week, and I think the patches were doing things like introducing new cards. Like, they were massive changes. I think it almost killed them. I vaguely remember them doing a GDC talk where they were like, "We don't want to do this ever again," but it made the game what it is. And so part of me was fascinated to see, for example, that the Ironclad was in Slay the Spire 2, because I was thinking, like, what do you... Like, surely any change you wanted to make to the Ironclad, you had already done. Like, it felt like it was done. And so, and I don't know if this is still the case for either of you, but like, I think lots of us are interested in game design, and I'm interested in it in a way where I don't fully understand it. Chris, I don't know if I still read the patch notes for Dota 2. I haven't played it in 5 years.
Played it in years either, but...
But it's fascinating to me, like, what did they decide to change and why? And Slay the Spire 2 is full of that, because you have some Ironclad cards that are unchanged. Some have disappeared for some reason. New ones have added. Like, last night I realized that one of the cards for Silent that is, I used to use all the time, it just has one very small change that I hadn't even noticed, in that it exhausts now. So you can only use it once and then it goes away. And I was like, wow, that's such a subtle but huge change, and it wasn't in the first game. And I just love like thinking about, you see all of these small tweaks that have been made on Slay the Spire, and because it's a game of tweaks, it's a game of small changes, and it always has been. And like you say, like the Ascensions are small changes, and the patches were small changes. Like, when you see these small changes, it's like, it's delicious to think about, like, why did you do that? Like, what?
Well, it's fascinating as well, because not only have they had the years of early access, as well as the years of just, live development that they've been doing, is that they've had a modding community who's been tearing the game to pieces and, building entire new campaigns out of it and stuff like that. And I remember, I think when they released the new class, was it the Monk, right? And everyone was, I remember on the Discord, people were sort of saying, well, what are they going to be able to come up with that the modding community hasn't, right? Like, surely there is a sort of some kind of limit to the amount of, numbers and ways of fiddling with them that we can put in this game. And it was fascinating to see that the Monk character came out and it's like, oh yeah, no, they found a way.
Yeah, there it is.
Like, the reason they made this game is because they have played more Magic the Gathering and Netrunner than anyone else on Earth, and they have genuine expertise in kind of the roguelike card game genre. That the modding community, for whatever reason, couldn't quite touch. And I thought that was it's a wonderful moment, really, because it's like, oh no, they do have some secret sauce here. It's not just they didn't just create a format for something. They created a mechanical expertise that is really thrilling.
Yeah, and obviously it's systems the game, but I think it's also like little sandboxes within sandboxes. Like, and I think that's, I mean, a lot of roguelikes are to some extent, but I think Slay the Spire is a really acute example of this, particularly in, I have a very fuzzy memory of the first one, but to my mind, the encounter designs in the new one feel a little bit more distinct, like as in not necessarily just the bosses, but like individual groups of characters that have some interrelation with each other that you learn, whether it's like this character will summon back that character or they'll shield each other or stuff like that. And I know that stuff was in the first game, but there's like several nested layers of complexity because just the spire itself, the run itself, and all of the different variables in it is one massive sandbox, really. And you could probably break it down into the acts and the bosses and all of the other stuff. And then each character is its own sort of, design environment. And I think actually, back to the sequel thing, a really good case for making a sequel is it basically like it allows them to make Ironclad 2 while allowing Ironclad 1 to still exist in the sandbox that it originally was part of. A really interesting thing they could do is basically just port the old characters directly into this one to see how they do, right? Like, and so, but I could understand why you'd want the opportunity to do that. Like, what would you do if you could do it from scratch? Because obviously you couldn't go back to Slay the Spire 1 and make those sorts of changes because it just upset people that have like so much invested knowledge in how those characters work. But the fundamental idea is good enough that you might want to reapproach it and put it in a new environment and see what it does. And I think that's like, I am not close enough to the first game to understand like what the impact of those changes are, but I can understand the design reason for wanting like a fresh start and like an air-gapped environment to kind of embark on that same design journey again. Maybe less hellishly, but like, kind of take a second bite at it. Because that's part of it as well, right? Like, it's not just we can do it right this time because that presupposes that you got something wrong the first time. It's like, frankly, this kind of problem solving from a design point of view is really fun. And so getting it to do it again can be kind of a treat. And I think that's maybe the other side of this, right? Like, it's not necessarily a chore to make the same, quote unquote, same game again, right? Like,
yeah, and there's a counterfactual where everyone says it's too similar, we don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
That would genuinely.
Oh, it goes without saying, whatever you do, you cannot win. Like, just I mean that talk about, you want to say quotable, just put that on the games industry. Like, what? Just make same thing again, too much like first thing. Make different thing, not enough like first thing. That's so you're fucked. Like, don't worry about that. Just do, you do you. Like, pick your poison. I'd be mad at you regardless. But yeah. So which character did you get to Ascension 10 with, Mike?
Ironclad, which I think was the most miserable choice to start with, possibly. I'm not sure. It was okay until we got to Ascension 9, and then it started to get real rough. Going back to, and then just getting a new character after all of that was like, oh, this is just like a breath of fresh air. So
I find it like sometimes really breath of fresh air and sometimes really like unpleasant. I'm like, ugh, I don't want to look at orbs. Like, it's like, I'm doing silent because I think I learned from my recent years in getting back into Magic is it doesn't matter what else is happening. My brain likes it when I draw a card. I just like to draw a card. I like to have card advantage. I like to have lots of cards in my hand. I just feel better about life if like many cards. It's like some lizard brain part of myself is like draw card good. And it took me a while. And this is a good example, I think, of maybe the difference between my first experience and my second to Slay the Spire is when I played Slay the Spire 1, for me, Silent was like poison class, basically. I just want to make poison number big. You win doing that once. And then you realize that what the class is actually about is like deck manipulation and like card advantage, which sounds boring, but actually isn't. It's actually the coolest thing. And that's kind of, I guess, the level up I've done now. But the reason I'm playing it is I think it kind of makes the Ascension, not grind, but like that experience more bearable because being able to, I feel like I get into fewer situations where like I'm just screwed, and that's purely by virtue of often being able to fish for like the one thing that would get me out of a situation.
I had a card in a run today which did, I think it was for the defect, and what it does, it costs 1, it draws 10 cards, and if any of them aren't 0 cost cards, it gets rid of them. So you basically end up with, if you collect a bunch of 0 cost cards, then you'll end up with those in your hand. And it was, I was sad to see that go when I died on level whatever, because that is perfect for me. Like, I love that. Like, oh, good, give me the task of collecting a bunch of 0 cards and just sort of hoarding them. And it was my downfall in the end, of course, because that was all I cared about. But like something like that is just like, that is a card conceived with fun in mind, right? That's not a card conceived with hard logic. It's like, knock yourself out with this stupid thing.
I think you're right as well, Jamie, that like it's also a lot more fair. I think it's both good at providing these opportunities to like build a fun thing, but also feels a lot more fair. Like in that I've had more moments where I felt like, oh, I've learned a thing now. Or for example, I hate the waterfall prick. I don't like him. Waterfall prick is like a first act boss who is a big waterfall prick. That's the only way I'm going to describe him. You've looked at the picture. Anyway,
you have everything you need to know about that.
Yeah, every turn, pretty much every round of combat, he will attack you and he will gain steam, like fill up with steam, which is a little number buff that goes up. Otherwise, doesn't do anything. He'll also heal himself and do other shitty things, but he gains steam, and then when he dies, he is then basically invulnerable. He apparently does have a health value, but it's in like the trillions. And then at the end of that round, after he dies, he explodes and does damage to you equal to his steam value. And he ended so many like Ascension 3 runs for me because I just wasn't in the habit then of checking at the beginning of the act. Is it steam? Is it fucking waterfall prick again? And then I think it was yesterday, I saw it early and I had like lots of like dexterity and armor run, which it ended on Act 3, I think that one. But getting to that boss then and getting to that final turn and styling it out to like 100 armor or something ridiculous and being like, fuck you, and just like watching him explode pitifully. That was good. That felt good because I had learned something rather than like I had just sort of gotten lucky in that particular case. I'm yet to figure out how to plan for Bees prick. I fucking hate Bees prick.
Mr. Bees.
Mr. Bees. Yeah. Mr. Bees is a bookshop in Bath, so I don't want to. I'm not talking about you, Mr. Bees, whoever you are. I'm talking about the Bees guy in Act 2 of Slay the Spire, who every time you hit him with an attack, bees make you tired. And if you are playing Silent and you have quite sensibly gone into like an oops, all Shivs, million attacks deck, and that's the only way you can do damage, it's fucking miserable. Because you don't have a choice to like stop. I guess I could choose to stop throwing Shivs at people, but I'm not going to.
But you're not that kind of person.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's too late for me to pivot into a poison build now, dickhead. Like, I guess the answer is to not just constantly throw the Shivs, but I didn't.
Do you have a most hated guy in this game, Mike?
Yeah, it's the Decimillipede. I don't know if you've... which is this like 3-segmented worm that you can encounter in Act 2, and if you kill one of the segments, but not all of them, the dead ones will revive themselves after a turn. And it's not just that. There was a fight in Slay the Spire 1 that was like that, but they also do 400,000 damage to you every turn, and it's just like... So many runs ended that way. One of the weird things is that the Ironclad is like, this big buff guy and he does damage. And in Slay the Spire 1, it was all about like taking damage as well. And he's the only character that heals after fights. But he is, in my experience, the least survivable of all of the classes in Slay the Spire 2, which took me a while to get used to. And I just died so many times to like Decimillipede. So many runs ended, like an embarrassing number of runs.
I actually quite like the Decimillipede, I guess, and lots of Silent runs. Silent has a lot more tools for that in general. And I like the game of like, I do like the timing game with those. I think that's what I mean by the new encounter designs. I think that timing game of like actually thinking it through when you have the options to do so, and like getting past that initial plateau of like, can I do enough damage or get enough armor to survive this, to how do I optimally win this for the next encounter, etc. I think I'm only just getting to that point now. But yeah, it's really interesting, I think, with Ascension that it ramps difficulty by taking away options a lot of the time. Like, for example, fewer potion slots and so on. And I know that forces you to prioritize and use the resources. But I find it really interesting that I'm trying to think of another game that does this, where like difficulty is a question of having less rather than number scaling or something like that, right? Like, I think it's really interesting that you end up, for example, you learn to use the potions more and earlier and at the right time, which is something you're perfectly capable of doing when you have 3 potion slots or whatever, if that makes sense.
My least favorite guy is Tunneler. Like, he's just a standard hive enemy, right? But what he does is, after a couple of rounds, he burrows under the ground, and he basically has a bunch of he has a bunch of block, which if you can get through, you'll stun him. But he also has a really meaty attack. So yeah, I'm just looking at his stats now. He gains 32 block, and then he will also attack you for 23 damage or 26 damage or something like that, right? And for some reason, like, you have to be prepared for this guy, because weirdly enough, just the ability to block on that turn to the degree that you can mitigate his damage output whilst also stunning him, it's a really clever baddie, because you have to find a way through it, and if you don't, you're just gone. And he has ended like loads of runs for me because it's just an emergency when he turns out.
I think he's a really good example of, I think, really nice bit of design, because it's like, I think sometimes the weakness in some of the enemy designs can be, if you don't have a specific thing, you're kind of fucked. Whereas I think that's a good example of an encounter where you can break the shield, which will stun him. You can, like, for example, poison or get some other effect on him under the shield, or like a weakness or something like that to mitigate the attack. I think those for me are the strongest moments, although I think there's benefit to both, but it's like, how do I adapt to this with the cards I already have, with the deck I currently have, rather than what card do I wish I had right now? Because I do find myself in that situation. And maybe that's where the bad feels come from when they arrive, is like, but
you've likely got a way to deal with him as you encounter him. It's unlikely that you won't be able to do it, but you need to think it through. It's a nice little nudge if you've been breezing through the early game a little bit too flagrantly.
No flagrant breezing in my latest struggles. Just getting murked by the big crab. He's actually one of the easier bosses, I think, but when he does fuck you up, he fucks you up. It's a crab who, if you're not looking at the right claw, will absolutely eat your lunch.
He's so big, and he's actually not too bad.
The Ironclad has a card that will play one attack in your hand for free at the end of your turn.
No.
And it's really great. It's an attack for free. You can have like a really expensive attack and it'll just play it for free. And then in the crab fight, it will pick one of the claws at random and you'll just die because it'll pick the wrong claw. And then the other one will punch you for twice the damage. And that's the run over. And it feels like he's just like, it's just such a himbo way to die, I feel like.
Yeah.
Just enjoying punching people, weren't really thinking about where we were going with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the more honourable version of the oops, I can't stop throwing shivs at the B-man way of losing, where like no one's making me do that. It's just like, I'm like the limes guy. Like, I can't hold all these shivs, so I'm going to throw them, even though it's going to completely fuck me. It's a good game. It's a good game. This is definitely one of those pod conversations where like I'm thinking about it now, right? Like it's late enough at the time of recording that Potato the cat just came in and yelled at me and demanded belly rubs because he knows it's bedtime. It's not bedtime because and I do kind of want to play Spire. But yeah. I suspect
to not talk anymore. Just all go to separate rooms. And play
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, we could, but I think but yeah, I think it'll be interesting because reflecting on it as well over the years, like there's always been a game like this, particularly recording the podcast, right? Whether it's Spire 1 or Monster Train, Spelunky, etc., which is that kind of social environment of, hey, how's it going? Like, you know, we all volunteer to go into like number hell every couple of years and we just share our experiences. Like, you know, like, how are you doing over there? And, you know, how's your struggle, right? Like, what particular form of this sort of brain time have you chosen for yourself? And I think like there was something I kind of I'd be interested in because I want to hear experiences with Marith and Jamie and Mike, and something that's been on my mind, and because it's true of Spire, it's true of all games, is sort of how you assess. This is the reason I was reminded at this point is what you said, Mike, about like you don't have to play on the highest difficulty setting, right? But how difficult it is for people to choose to enjoy playing a game as opposed to giving themselves the next accomplishment they believe they need to do, or the next level of escalation they feel like they need to do. And I think like for me, there's a sort of, I think the most virtuous, I don't know, high nutritional value form of that kind of like steady escalation is when everyone's learning together, right? Rather than on a sort of solitary treadmill trying to, obviously it can be edifying to test your brain against something for a long time. But I think there's something kind of special about this moment in time for a game like, say, Spire 2, where it's like we're all kind of discovering it, feeling out, applying previous experience and perspectives to it, and kind of able to share that stuff. And I would argue the same is kind of true of Marathon as it gets to like the midway point of its first season. And so, yeah, I have played a lot of Marathon in the last couple of weeks, but I'd be really curious to know how you've both fared in QR code hell.
They really like perspex in the future, don't they?
They do.
It's like,
yeah, they do. That's a white,
they found
clean
a lot
future.
of perspex.
Well, I guess we don't know. It might be super unfashionable on Earth now, right? Because it takes place like 100 years after they crashed the colony or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, true.
So everyone's just sort of walking around going,
It's like, ugh. Yeah.
perspex, please. Yes, so it was very hard to sit there in my recording studio last week on the last episode and listen to you wax lyrical about Marathon to not then go and buy it, which I then did.
You can say wang on, Jamie. You can say wang on. It's fine.
No, it was as many in the Discord pointed out, your enthusiasm for it was a real delight to listen to and contagious, turned out. So I have played a fair bit of it. I say a fair bit. I've probably played it for maybe 3 or 4 hours. I played much more Slay the Spire in almost exactly the same time frame. I am not having a good time with it so far. There's a couple of reasons which are kind of slightly not the game, although it's no one else's fault, in that like the matchmaking system is kind of not working on PlayStation at the moment, or maybe the player count is too low. So I think I've only had one game where anyone else was kind of along for the ride. And I'm going to constantly compare it to Arc Raiders. For Arc Raiders, that was never a problem. There was always some Russian guys who I could tag along with, and they, whatever. So I've been rolling almost entirely solo in it, and I just I try to put this as simply as possible. The lethality of the world is just too hardcore for me. So like, I'm happy to kind of. I really love the way the world looks. I really love the way it feels. Like, the more I play of it, the more I'm completely staggered by the design of the game, like the graphics, all the glitchy shit that happens between missions, even the matchmaking screen with the hungry moth on it, which I've watched quite a lot of at this point. There's some glorious things going on there, and the shooting feels great. The exploration feels great. I love looking at the graffiti. The lore entries, what the fuck? Those are some really good lore entries right there. But the lethality of the game, it just feels too punishing. Like, I just keep getting killed and having to start again. And it just hurts too bad. It's like, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that this just isn't the game for me, or I need to make some friends who I can play it with. But I'm happy to go in and kind of, from what you were talking about, like, you can still achieve your goals quite easily, and actually, if you focus on the missions that it gives you and complete them, most of them are agnostic of you being able to extract afterwards. But I think perhaps just through poor luck, or maybe through something more fundamental, I just keep dying in really undignified and unsatisfying ways due to my own carelessness. And I find it quite oppressive. I feel like I'm constantly being stalked, which I often am. There's often this thing like where I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just pop off a couple of shots at that robot over there to get this bounty up. I'm sure there's no one around, and then, the next thing I'm being ganked by a bunch of cybernetic perspex lads. So yeah, I'm just finding it a bit punishing in that respect. And like, I love everything that happens when you get back to your UI screen and you get to talk to a weird Max Headroom guy about the future and stuff about the future. That's great. It's just too punishing for me in play, I think. that is where I'm at constantly. I am going to keep trying because it is a very nice looking and feeling game. And as you said, Chris, you said a couple of times, like it's unique. They've made a different thing than anyone else has made, and it's not just buyer's remorse, which is kind of pulling me through. I know there's something there. There's something there that's kind of drawing me back into it. But yeah, not quite there yet with the pleasure.
Well, shit. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Now, defend the game.
How have you found it, Mike?
Well, let me open by saying that I hate extraction shooters.
Cool.
So, no. So this is true, and that was why I originally didn't get Marathon. And then I kept seeing people talking about it in these really interesting ways. And then this is probably a little crazy, but the thing that actually sold it for me and made me buy it was learning that Brian Buckley and Jason Grimblatt, who are the Case of Cud devs, had been involved in the narrative design. I don't know why that tipped me over the edge to buy a game that is mainly about shooting.
That was also a factor in my purchasing the game, just so you know. I just do what those guys tell me.
So I played for about 5 or 6 hours. This was quite exciting because my arm felt better enough to actually play it a little bit, which was pretty cool. And I
feels
really
thematically on point as well.
Yes, that's very true.
Coming back online.
And I'm enjoying a lot of it. Actually, I really love the setting and the aesthetic, like you've both been saying. And I think So I've played some extraction shooters, but not loads of them. I think the way that this one brings its classes in is really cool. I think the classes are really fun. I've mostly been playing as the Recon, which has been a lot of fun. But I have also enjoyed doing these solo runs as a Rook. And that is a whole world of its own. I think I really just like stupid or unbalanced or impractical ways to play a game, and soloing into these multiplayer games is always one of them. And I like the fact that they've begun to think about it as a separate thing, and I hope they do more with it.
Just for people listening, the Rook is the character who can rook up later on later on in the map's time. Everyone else starts at the same time, but you can be a Rook.
Yeah, the rule is so Rooks are scavs from Tarkov, so they are solo only. You can't play a Rook if you're in a party. They are a fixed random loadout, so you can't bring any of your normal stuff with you. You can upgrade the Rook, but you can't choose what they have. And they can't do missions, so you're just loading in, and you only load into maps that are the full experience. So you won't load into a map if it's solos or duo queue, which doesn't exist at the moment. It'll only be if it's teams of 3. And the way it works, basically, matches are 25 minutes long. It will spawn 2 Rooks at 17 minutes, 2 Rooks at 15, and 2 Rooks around 12.
I didn't actually know that was how it worked. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not... they do some little matchmaking things with the numbers. It's not always even. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it's... I'd love to talk about the Rook experience, but that's the logic of it. So it gives you a kind of... You're not risking any of your own stuff, but you're coming in often to a match in progress, a map in progress, which is a very important aspect of Marathon. But I love the Rook because the theme of the Rook generally I think is really well executed, which is that rather than your cool cyber crash test dummy body being beamed into the map, you are being beamed into one of the robots who's already on the map, and now your consciousness is inside this little clanky guy who has the cutest little robot voice, and his only real ability is to press a button to momentarily mask himself from NPC or PvE opponents. Yeah, I love everything about the Rook. I love the Rook code of conduct, if you've encountered that at all, Mike. The Rooks seeing each other and almost always ends in violence, but every now and then they'll do the dance where you crouch and stand up again. And you can make these silent, tacit agreements should we go be dickheads together? almost never pays off because Rooks, you should really kill each other. You don't have much to gain from working together. Heartbreakingly.
We are by our nature beings of violence.
Yeah, exactly. But occasionally it'd be this is going to be the last. It's basically a little goblin. This is going to be the last exfil on outpost. All the people with the good loot from the middle of the map will be coming this way. Shall we sit here and be rascals? And it's like that. It's a profound energy. I love it very much. Yesterday, heartbreakingly, I ran around a corner, another Rook was there, and then by the time he was already doing the uppy downy peace dance, I had already stabbed him right in the head.
That's great, brother.
I felt terrible.
So
it's like,
sorry.
father, no. Like, anyway, that's Rooks.
Saving Private Ryan.
But yeah, like,
it's good though, isn't it? And it
Yeah.
shouldn't be good, because it's a game about being in a team of people and like fighting a bunch of stuff and like outwitting people and getting loads of loot. And you basically are like, what if I just had no guns, really, no help, no backup? I was just constantly outnumbered. Really, a stiff breeze would blow me over. I don't have any abilities that really are super useful. Although, I mean, it is, being able to mask yourself is situationally very useful for some things. And yet, but yet you get to be this wild card, and like you said, you're beaming into an NPC, and in many ways, you become an NPC for the people that are playing the real game, right? You become this like extra spice factor. And when it goes well, first of all, you feel bad, or at least I do anyway. I found an LMG, which is a gun that a Rook should not have, and I absolutely laid into a bunch of people that were struggling to exfil, and I hope they thought it was a cool story for them. I doubt they did, but like, God, your heart is in your throat at that point. Like, it's, oof, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's interesting in that light. I think it's maybe a way to start carving up Marathon and explain, like, I do think it's not a game for everybody. And maybe there's a broader point about what it means for a game that requires a player count to not be for everybody. And more broadly than that, what does for everybody mean in a world of, like, what kind of, in a world where, Epic is laying off Fortnite devs, what does for everybody mean is an interesting question. And about retention mechanics and so on, there's lots to get into. But I think the reason I like it so much is I think it's a game with a lot of like design integrity, despite obviously like, which is not to say that other extraction shooters or shooters don't, but I think it is quite self-contained as an experience in terms of like, it has its ecosystem and its way of playing, and it's not always perfectly balanced, but I think it's got like, I think the way I would describe it is it's like a very slow game of Counter-Strike to some extent, with that kind of like economic meta, rather than going round by round in a 40-minute Counter-Strike match. It's taking place over the weeks and months of the marathon season as your kind of fortunes dip and fall. Its economy serves that purpose of not being a kind of treadmill for you to grind your way up, but being a kind of undercurrent of drama that's like, oh, I'm going to invest in this run and maybe save money for the next one, kind of like a buy round versus a cheap round in a game like Counter-Strike or Valorant. That perspective, I think, is actually quite hard to grasp or to kind of feel in a world where games don't treat things like that. They don't tell you that. Like, every game is promising forever progression that is your kind of thing. I think the things like a Rook run are what really like balance the experience, because what it challenges you to do is like choose what you want to achieve from a round, go in and try and achieve that thing, and the story is whatever happens in that run, whether you're doing it solo, duos, trios, etc. And then Rook is like the discovery mode, where it's like, I don't really know what I'm going to achieve, because you don't know when you're going to spawn or what situation you're going to find yourself in. But it's like, you're not risking anything. So it's just go in and have an adventure. And I think that version of it, I hadn't made this connection until you just said it, Mike, but I think it's one of the most successful examples of like asymmetric PvP I could think of. Because otherwise Marathon is symmetric, right? To the extent that obviously it's PvPvE, but it's relatively matched teams, etc. Whereas if you think about that kind of generation of shooters like Evolve, for example, and there are games that have done this reasonably well, but one player is the monster. It's not necessarily obvious that that's what Rook is, but I think that's kind of what it is. Like, I had a great one the other day where I spawned and I could hear a massive team fight in the distance. And so I just went over there, and it was 3 teams, and they were in that kind of 3 teams of 3, and they were in like this attritional war with each other around a whole bunch of buildings at the edge of the forest in Dire Marsh, and in and out, and they're dying and reviving and so on. And I had an incredible time, like, being a complete dick to them, like popping out from behind a bush, killing one member of one team and running away again. And there's an insane upgrade that I can't believe they did, which allows the Rook to spawn with 3 Claymore mines. So I'd made myself this little nest of Claymore mines, and I was popping out, shooting people, hiding. And obviously they're too distracted by each other to ever be able to risk coming to deal with me. And eventually someone did tag me and I was like down on the ground and I couldn't self-revive, and then he ran around the corner straight into the nest of Claymore mines. He goes up. I think his team then loses the team fight, and like I haven't gained anything from that other than fun, which is a valid thing to gain from playing a game. I should stress. But the like those little moments are so good. I think those little like I've entered this really dynamic environment. I truly don't know where this is going. Is great. Like I had a wonderful one. The third map, there's the fourth map, Cryo, which is really, really cool, I think, as a piece of design. Probably talk about it all by itself. It's very much like what Bungie learned about raids mixed with the PvP thing, which is really interesting. But the third map, Outpost, I think is like the pinnacle of that game's map design. It's so good. It's got like so many hidden entrances and hidden mechanics and like things you can unlock and so much logic. And what that means is like when you spawn as a Rook really matters, because it means what phase of the match you'll be in. Like if the center of the map is called the pinwheel, and everyone on the map gets if a team breaches the pinwheel, that basically like kicks the whole map into a second phase, because everyone gets an alert message. And what it means, it doesn't change things about the outside of the map, but what it does mean is someone's in the middle of the map getting all the good stuff right now, or fighting the hard robots in there. And any decision you make at that point is really interesting. It's like trying to figure out which entrance they used, because there's several and some of them are hidden. Some of them can subsequently be like kind of piggybacked onto by Rooks, for example. And like there's so much interesting stuff. And I had a run where it spawned late as a Rook, didn't see anybody, but sort of had to do the kind of detective work of like, okay, pinwheel has been breached, from where, so I can follow them in, but it's very quiet, which means that probably a team has won the map, right? There's probably not too many teams out there, unless they're doing something different, which is unlikely. And you can see the bodies of previous team fights and pick your way through it. And got into the pinwheel. Team of 3 in there, basically the victors of the map, clearing house at that point. There's some things that you're restricted in based on which keys you have and so on. And the other thing about Outpost is really hard to extract from. All the extracts are either guarded exfils, which means that AI spawn when you use them, or they require a key, and there are only a finite number of keys on the map. There is no free exfil. And eventually, I was just in a little rat in the walls, scurrying around, avoiding getting, and just hoovering up loot that they'd left behind, and like picking stuff up, the bodies of the teams they had killed on the way in, etc. And I need to leave if I want to keep any of this stuff. The final, like not the final exfil, but the locked exfil spawns in the middle of the pinwheel. They activate it, and I'm just watching them get ready to leave. And then right at the end, they do the thing a lot of people do in the exfil, which is like drop a smoke grenade. And so I just walked into the exfil with them and just stood next to them and waited until like the countdown got to like 2 seconds and just went, hello! And then beamed like, and it was fucking incredible. My only interaction with a human player in that game was being the weird, like, fourth person in someone's car when they thought they were on a family holiday with 3, and like, who the fuck are you? Oh, and then it's over. Like, and it was great. And that, there's something about that as like a like stress aside, like the stress of the game and the gear fear and the loss aside, little moments like that I haven't gotten out of either Ark actually really, or Tarkov. I mean, Tarkov is so hardcore, but I think it's my concern for it, I suppose, is I don't think those moments they're certainly not immediately accessible, both behind like a level gate and everything else, and the experience of like I'm a couple of hours in and I don't know how I feel, or I don't like this, is like seems to be pretty common.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, like, is that like an accessible enough form of enjoyment to get over the game's otherwise lack of like easy wins, basically, which I think is what it comes down to. Like, it's not a game that like hands you anything really, maybe apart from the missions, but crucially the things it's giving you, it's going to take away again, because they're going to wipe progress every 3 months, which I think is fundamentally like pretty honest game design. Like, you know, I think that's a good thing, but I'm really interested to find out what happens when people discover that, hey, all that faction progress erased like every 3 months. And it's so contrary to how mainstream games are designed that, yeah, like I'm really enjoying it right now, and I really hope this isn't its peak. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know if any of that makes the game more appealing to you, Jamie, as like something to invest yourself in, because I do think it's sort of like, yeah.
I want to push on a little bit. I'm not at the point where I've just had enough. It's like I can see that there's something I want to access. I want to jack into it with my cybernetic with wibbly things that they've got in that game. So I will push on a little bit more. I think I haven't played as a Rook yet. I only vaguely aware of what that was, so I might give that one a little go and try and play around with it a little bit more. I think there's still, even though I know this game isn't Destiny, there's still a kind of bit of me which is like, why can't I run into a room full of funny looking guys and shoot them all in the head and they go
Yeah.
And like there's still a bit of me which wants to do that. You really can't do that's like the worst thing to do in this game is to try and do that, because everyone will just run and kill you.
It's such an interesting thing where it's like, you've got to remember, every other marathon player, they're like a spider. They're more afraid of you than you are of them, generally speaking. You know what I mean? It's like, as soon as you realize everyone's frightened, then it does, like, you get over a hump. Like, it's almost like weird imposter syndrome. Like, someone's fighting a robot over there. They must be a big boy. I'm not going over there. But like, meanwhile, they're over there going, fuck. Like, and I feel like that's the,
Yeah. That's actually, I think the moment I got back into Slay the Spire 1 was when I was hearing Jorbs talk about loss. He likes losing. And he was talking about whether, like, to him, it's not interesting whether every Slay the Spire game is winnable. What he's interested in is what is the best you can do in every Slay the Spire game. And I think there are days when I approach Dota like that, and days when I didn't. And I think the same will be true of Marathon if I play more of it. And I think the extraction shooter genre is really fascinating in that regard, because it almost feels like as a genre it should not be this popular, because it is designed almost in some ways to generate that feeling that you just described, Chris, of like, most game design is about giving the player a nice thing, and then we've just sort of designed the perfect system for them to lose it again.
Right.
But it's not built in like a roguelike or like Dota where you naturally expect it every time. It's that sometimes you lose everything. I think that's what I hope to see, more experimentation, because the genre does feel like it's caught between super sweaty and super fun. Like, it feels, Marathon at times feels like friend slop, and at times it feels like CS:GO. And I think that's a lot of the tension, and a lot of what's interesting about them is because those two things are happening at once. I obviously want it to get crazier and more chaotic, but I think probably that mix is what's important.
Yeah, I think an interesting counterpoint, not counterpoint, like a compliment to that is that I think one of the kind of like under-remarked triumphs of the Battle Royale genre is it got 99% of players to accept losing, right? Like, you consider the Battle Royale to be a genre where vastly more players lose every single round by the nature of the game, and the things that ameliorate that is like quick queuing into the next one, etc., and that pattern. But like, you sort of accept loss in that sense. Extraction shooters mitigate it in a different way, because you can choose to leave, and there might be some challenge associated with that, but it's more of a push your luck thing, where it's like, I got what I came in for. I can go now. I can go and head to an exfil, and I'm probably going to be all right, really. But what if? Like, what if I kept pushing? What if I, mid-mission, decided that my objective is something different to what I came in with? And that can lead to real disappointment, because then it's sort of like, oh, but, the classic of like, I did my mission, and some of them do require you to exfil, or I found the item I was looking for, and then I died. Often the key there is a self-reflection of like, what were you doing when you died? And it was like, well, I was chasing a player. And that, I think the difference between the two things is agency, right? Like, in a Battle Royale, you're dead. Obviously, you probably had some agency in picking the fights you took and winning them or not, but it's kind of done, and you're into the next one. Whereas I think the kind of like, as in a game of Dota, for example, the decision-making process that leads you to a bad outcome in an extraction shooter, like a Dota loss, is kind of much more prolonged and complex. And it kind of asks you to reflect in a different way on like, man, I rotated through this map really badly, or this was the moment when I started getting greedy, or this was when I got distracted, and stuff like that. I love that stuff, because the same reason I love Dota. But it'll be interesting if that, like, like something like Hunt, it asks people to have like real simpatico with the people they're playing with as well. And I think all those challenges are going to be really interesting as it goes into whatever it becomes next. Like, I'm really glad they made this and not another Destiny and not even like another single player campaign, to be honest, because this to me is like a more interesting design sandbox to be playing in. I'm really fascinated to see if that rule about, you know, more defined experiences necessarily doing better can work for a game like this, which is also like one of Sony's big first party titles for the year, etc., etc., etc.
They could have so easily. I mean, nothing's easy, but they could have put a whole, you know, PvE mode into this, couldn't they? Where you just have these maps with a bunch of guys and you do the Destiny thing in there, and they, you know, there's a bunch of things that they could have done which they've like very clearly pivoted away from, and like that's the thing that's going to keep me on it for at least a little bit longer, because they've made a bunch of very distinct choices, which is a rare thing. And you know, I think in the AAA space in particular, it's a little bit jarring that, right? So like Arc Raiders comes out of the kind of AA space, right, where you're sort of more amenable, as do a lot of these other games, right? They come from the AA space where you're sort of more amenable to jank because it's kind of priced into the experience in some way. And like a lot of these things, you know, a lot of the games that you're mentioning, like the battle royales or the extraction shooters, they come from that world as well. Whereas this is a company very much they've been at the vanguard of AAA games for a long time, and they're making a game, you know, which is a AAA extraction shooter, probably the first, right? And the choices that they've made are very clear and very like distinct, and you have to come to that party. I'm used to doing that in games like, you know, I play lots of, you know, traditional roguelikes. I play Dwarf Fortress. I'm used to friction, but friction in AAA is often, you know, something that is very much for the Souls likes. And everyone else we kind of expect a seamless experience. And as you've been saying, Chris, I'm just, you know, I think it's absolutely right that like the friction in this game, for all the perspex involved, the friction in this game is very conspicuous. You know, it's a game that needs you to come to the party, and there's something about, even in the UI design and the way it looks, it's like it gives you a message, doesn't it, of like, this is just the way this thing is. Like you were saying, like the best design document for the game is the game itself. And that is why I'm not just rage quitting immediately, because they're saying to me, I can tell, this is the way that this game is. This is the way that the world we've created is. And we it's not a question of just like load up and start shooting. You have to come to the party. And so it's like, that's what's going to draw me back in a little bit more. It's a strikingly confident thing to do, especially in the face of like, you know, an early like alpha test, was it, which everyone hated, and like, you know, all this kind of the conversation around this stuff, and a tricky few years for Destiny, to say the least. You know, there's something about that kind of you got to respect, right? So that's part of why I'm gonna give it a few more goes before I hang up my. It's like, what can you hang up if you are
nothing?
Nothing before I hang up my detachable
arms. How do you hang them up?
Turn in your arms and feet.
Something's just really clicked based on what you just said, which is, if we lived in a reality where Marathon was the first game from a new studio formed by ex-Bungie devs, that would make a ton of sense. And the reason that clicked is because that's basically the case for Arc, right? Like Arc is a lot of X-Dice, Embark, sorry, is a lot of X-Dice people, including leadership. And so, you know, that thing, that pattern of the last couple of years where like AAA devs kind of leave or get made redundant and kind of not demote themselves, but kind of drop down to a AA level and then make the game that would have been deemed too risky to make at their previous studio or something like that. It's weird how much Marathon feels like that, actually. It's like, it's sort of, you know, and I think, I don't know, I think there's like, I'm really fascinated by its success, because obviously a lot of the kind of assumption that it would do badly is based on the relative success or failure of other like new multiplayer only shooters at that price point, Concord, etc., and the precedent set there. the counterpoint being that recent history says if you're going to make an online multiplayer game, make it something that provokes strong feelings. And it kind of goes like, it kind of sounds obvious, but we've gone through a long time of like caution when it comes to like, we want to flatten this curve a little bit. We want to flatten these peaks and troughs. I think probably,
and that was the response people had to battle royales when they first came out. I remember thinking that, being like listening to an episode of Crowbar where they were talking about it, where you guys were talking about it, being like, what the, you literally one team with this stupid. So it's just a game built on failure then. Great.
It's not a mystery to me that Battle Royale emerged out of both Minecraft and Arma, right? Like two very different ends of PC gaming as a space, because both like the milsim vets and the children craved the punishing, decreasing death circle. Like, I mean, it's still probably one of the enduringly funniest pop culture things of the last forever that a film about punishing children became like evolved over time into like Hatsune Miku riding Godzilla into a fight against a Star Destroyer watched by 4 billion people. And it's like, like in the world we live in, all them children in the movie Battle Royale fucking queuing up to get on that bus. That's the Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory golden ticket. Imagine if it hadn't. They crave the Hunger Games.
Imagine if it hadn't happened with that movie and it had happened with the movie Audition instead. And all mainstream culture was built around driving pins into the stomach of businessmen after you've catfished them.
I feel like I would have been harder to build that in Minecraft.
Customizable pins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it all ends. But it all arcs towards the same point, though, which is, I don't know, the xenomorph flossing. Like, it's, or does it? But I think, it's like, I feel like
either way it would have ended up there, basically.
Yeah. It's like nature keeps inventing the crab. It's a bit like that.
The arc of history is long, but it bends towards.
We can't end up with two different arc of history things in two different episodes of this podcast.
And that is like, you put a roguelike in the hands of someone who's never played one before, a traditional ASCII turn-based one, and that is what they will say. They will say, I hate this. Like, what is this? This has no graphics. Dwarf Fortress had no graphics for so long. And, it's like, it's an instinct which is a real font of creativity.
I kind of agree, but then part of me thinks, the kind of genesis of this medium to some extent in like arcades, right? It kind of came in with this basic assumption that you play a game for a bit and then you might lose and it's over, which I think is a sort of reasonable assumption about a game. And I think if you went back a certain point in time to like the late 70s or the 80s and went, hey, we're playing Gallagher, well, what if it never let you stop? Like, what if you just kept going? And they're like, well, I've run out of credits. No, you haven't. You can have as many as you like. But if you want to put, you know what I mean? Like, there's part of me that's like, maybe it's just, I mean, I feel like in this episode, generally, I've been like big on entropy, but like, let things die. That's my take.
Big on entropy, big on the causes of entropy.
Yeah.
I like the idea of the extraction shooter as an arcade cabinet that you put guns into instead of coins. And sometimes you find extra guns there that extend your run. And then at some point you run out of guns and your mum didn't give you enough guns to put into the arcade machine, so you have to go home. You can't finish Marathon.
Or in Marathon's case, you play as the little goblin younger sibling Rook, that's the thing.
Yes.
That's the energy. They have the energy of like, it's the youngest siblings go on the Xbox.
And you've been given the bad controller that doesn't, like, some of the buttons don't work on.
Yeah.
You're going to drive the wrong way around the track.
And then you absolutely mug your older siblings and their friends at GoldenEye or whatever, or Diddy Kong Racing, or whatever the fuck it is you're playing. That will feel better than any subsequent gamer's experience in your life. Like, that's...
Absolutely. Yeah. Just turning up and playing as Eddie on Tekken 3 and just smashing those kick buttons.
It's like, they have made you play as Tails. And God, that's too close to home. That's way too close to home. Shit.
Oh, man, I always had to be Tails. I was like, and like my friend Jake was always Sonic, and I was always Tails. And you're like, I can make things happen. I can help. I can help if you just jump Sonic into my arms. I can carry you over this castle. I can help. It's like, I don't need you, Tails.
It goes deeper than that for me, because we used to play Sonic. Me and my best friend, when I was in primary school, loved Sonic so much that we used to play Sonic in the playground. And one of the greatest tragedies of my early life was when, initially a great thing, Sonic 3 came out, and suddenly there was Knuckles, a cooler guy for me to be, because I was definitely the secondary friend, and so Christian was always Sonic, but then I could be Knuckles, but then tragedy struck in real life when we made a third friend, and I was demoted to Tails again.
No! Christian, how could you?
Yeah, this is why you never make a third friend. And also, why they should bring back Marathon Duos Q. That's
Yeah.
Say exactly the same thing happened with Batman, by the way. Didn't get to be Robin. I was Alfred all the way through primary school. Not a joke. Genuinely, that was the role that fell to me. Just got to... It was even too early to sob Michael Caine-ishly.
Genuinely, though, I think talking to you both about these experiences, I think this is why the Rook resonates with certain people, because it's like, this is what I deserve, and then you get one over on these people, and you're like, that's what you get. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. It's like there's something. I think I will say, I think that's the thing, is it lets comedy in. I mean, I think Marathon can be a very funny game. Very silly things can happen. You can get in real scenarios. But I think Rook, because it's low stakes, kind of lets you, kind of described it in those goblin terms, being a little rascal. I think that's such an important counterbalance. The beautiful sting in the tail being, when it goes well, you are fucking with other people. You're fucking with 3 other people. You've ruined, like, just in some sort of like emotional net zero sort of like, zero sum sense. One person has had fun directly at the expense of 3 other people, which doesn't feel like winning maths if you're Bungie, which is like, but good for them. You know what I mean? I'm glad they did it. I now want to play Marathon. Do you
want to play Marathon more, or do you want to play Slay the Spire more?
I'm going to play Slay the Spire before bed, because Marathon before bed is too exciting.
100%.
Yeah.
I might play Marathon before bed.
You bold sod. I suspect that might be all the podcasts we've got time for.
Yes.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Please join us again soon.
Always a pleasure. Looking forward to coming again.
Been a real pleasure. Outro, I suppose.
I was going to say, Mike, you've got a book coming out in the near future.
Thank you so much, Jamie, because I'm I'm the fucking worst at this. Yes, I do. I do have.
I knew I was forgetting something.
Well, it's funny. What we were talking about at the beginning. I've written a book. It's called Next Level: Making Games That Make Themselves, and it's about procedural generation, which is basically what I've dedicated my whole career to, and it's about why I think it's beautiful and clever. And it's like an accessible pop science book about what it is, the great games that used it, the wonderful people that thought about it. It's coming out in about a month.
Amazing.
And I'll be yapping more about it. But thanks very much for reminding me to talk about that.
Fucking great save, Jamie. Can I just say?
We'll definitely have you back for whatever you like, but also for a chat about that book when it comes out.
Yeah, that'll be wonderful.
Yeah. And in the meantime, just good luck with everybody's Slay the Spire runs. I hope you're all staying hydrated. That is now all the podcasts.
Chuck those potions.
Yeah, exactly. But only 2. That's all the podcasts we've got time for. If you'd like to hear more podcasts like this, you can find them on our website at crateandcrowbar.com. You can find them on YouTube at youtube.com/crateandcrowbar. Thank you, as ever, to our Patreon supporters who put up with this. Find out more about backing the podcast at patreon.com/crateandcrowbar. Again, keeps happening. That's it. My name is Chris Thurston. Joining me tonight have been
Jamie Britton. I never doubted you, Noel. Well done. I love you.
Yeah, congrats.
And Mike, I guess it's Mike Cook. It's
Yeah,
me.
where can people find more
well.
details on your book and assorted business, Mike?
Oh yeah, that's a great. I mean, I guess the best place would be to look up me on a social media site such as Blue Sky, where I'm MTRC. But you can also find it at any good bookstore, in any good shop, pretty much. So if you put Next Level into
Any
a
shop.
search bar, in any shop, any shop that contains a bookstore within it.
Sure.
I meant to say any country, because I listed like UK bookshops, and then a bunch of American people were like, I can't find it in these UK bookshops, and I was like, that makes total sense. You should look in the American ones, but they are in the American ones as well.
You have to fly to England.
But they are out there, I promise you.
They're in every shop. That's what I'm taking from this.
They're in every shop.
I'm going to get my copy from Pets at Home tomorrow.
Yeah, oh good. Support your local Pets at Home. And Potato will be pleased with that as well.
He will,
they sell a cat version as well.
Do they?
Yeah.
He can't read.
But
no, that's and also I just realized something. There'll be a link in the show notes, won't there, for this very episode? That's a place.
That's the other place you can look. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting that in the show notes.
Past me, future me.
He hasn't done it yet.
I haven't done it yet. Fuck. This reminds me of the old days of how bad these outros could get. I think that's it. Thank you so much, Mike. Again, thank you, Jamie.
Wonderful.
Thank you for listening. Indeed. Thanks for listening, everybody. Fuck, I said it by myself.
No,
All right,
I
bye.
forgot. Bye.